The Event Industry News podcast is sponsored by Present Communications. Present provides broadcast quality live, hybrid, and virtual event production trusted by organizations where reliability really matters. From corporate town halls and conferences to high profile live streams, they design and deliver fully resilient systems that work first time. Hello, everybody, and welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast with me, James Dixon. Wishing you all a very good morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever or wherever you tune in to today's podcast from. I'm in a little bit more sort of casual attire today, t-shirt. It's another lovely warm day in the summertime here in the UK. Looking forward to having a relaxed conversation with my guest today. And we're going to be talking all things AI, which is very apropos a lot of discussions that we're having at the moment in the events industry, but on a more specific level today, an AI-powered sales tool. To tell us more about it is my guest today and the CEO and founder of Super Benji, Jeremy Bassett. Jeremy, a very warm welcome to the podcast.
Great to be here, James.
And
Looking forward to
thanks
this.
from a lovely sort of office hub setting where you are, I believe, in Oxford this morning. I did ask when Jeremy joined the line this morning if it was a virtual background. It looked far too sort of polished to be real. Yeah,
You might
great.
see some of my colleagues popping into the background here, James. So, yeah.
Fabulous. So yeah, Jeremy, a warm welcome along to the Event Industry News podcast for the first time. And I mentioned in my introduction there that we're going to be talking sort of AI and more specifically AI powered sales tool. Before we sort of dive into what Super Benji is, let's start with yourself. Joining the podcast for the first time, tell us a little bit about yourself, Jeremy, and what your background is.
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I mean, I'm passionate about events and passionate about business. And it's really a combination of those two things that have led us to this point. My background, I used to be a marketing director. I was at Unilever for 14 years. And when I was at Unilever, I was responsible for organizing events that brought together our brands and startups that were inventing the future of marketing. And I then left Unilever and set up a consultancy that effectively did that. What we did actually was we would work with an event organizer. We would effectively take over a share of their floor plan, and we were responsible for selling that to startups. So we had to find innovative startups, pitch in the idea of you should be at events, and then educate them on how to make the most of that opportunity. And we had to do that in a way that was better and more efficient than the event organizer themselves. Otherwise, they would do it themselves. And so what we were effectively doing was creating the innovation zone or the discovery zone or the startup zone for loads of different events. And what that forced us to do is to be able to find interesting companies better than event organizers, reach out to them and sell to them in a more efficient way than the event companies. And with the onset of AI, I mean, goodness, what is that? Almost 4 years ago now. Wow. When ChatGPT 3.0 launched, that was a game changer for us because we realized we could actually fully automate a lot of that process. And so we started playing around with that. And basically over the last 3-4 years, we've been optimizing that workflow initially for ourselves and then realizing actually we've solved a huge problem here, a problem for the event industry. And so we then spun it out as a separate business 2.5 years ago now. And and that was the start of Super Benji. So really understanding what it takes to find interesting exhibitors and sponsors, reach out to them and get them on board. And then, my team, they hated doing sales. When I say that, I say they hated doing the outreach, actually closing the deal and coming up with the idea and how you might come to life at a show. It was quite interesting. But doing the outreach was quite painful. And so that's the part that we've focused on with Super Benji.
So it's an AI sales and kind of lead generation tool. Is that fair to sort of a fair overview of what it actually is?
Yeah, exactly. So literally, if you were to go to our website and you drop your email in, it would look up who are you, what are your shows or show that you might be focused on, who would be the ideal exhibitor or sponsor or speaker for that show or delegate for that show. And then it does a deep dive into going to competing shows and scraping their list of exhibitors, understanding who's new in the industry that could be interesting as a sponsor, finding the right person, validating their email, and then it does deep research on each person. The number one sales mechanism that we've found worked, whether that's manual or through AI, is showing someone that you're interested in them and that you think what they're doing could be an important feature at your show. And
Mm.
that just works 9 times out of 10. So what we do is we listen to their podcasts, we read their blogs, we check out their LinkedIn, we look at what are the things that your prospects are excited about, and then we effectively take that content, work out what's relevant to the show itself, and then say, we loved what you said about this. That's exactly what we'd love to be showcasing at our upcoming show. We'd love to explore how we can feature that as a sponsor or exhibitor or speaker
Mm.
at our upcoming show. Can we have a call? And we're getting fantastic reply rates.
And I mean, one thing that springs to mind is, when it comes to sales in any shape or form, yes, that you've got to have processes, you've got to have a good approach to it, but it also boils down to it being a numbers game. Anybody who's ever worked in sales will say, ultimately it's a numbers game. If you need to sell 10 spaces, then you need to contact at least X amount of people. And if you've got even more leads, even more companies that you weren't aware of before to potentially contact, then statistically you're going to improve your chances of selling whatever it is you've got to sell.
Yeah, I think that's right. It definitely, there is an element here of quantity, but I think you can change the numbers a lot through quality.
Mm.
If you think about most event organizers, they're not just organizing a show, they're building a community. And what you don't want to do when you're building a community is start to, um, you know, be known as a spammer within that community. You want every touch point with everyone, whether they're paying you or not, whether they're an exhibitor or a potential exhibitor, to be a very positive interaction. Um,
Mm.
and one of the things we've realized is that, if you're building a community, the way you do outreach to that community determines the community you become. If you do outreach in a very transactional way, you'll probably attract very transactional people to that community, and you'll probably become a transactional community. If you do outreach in a very relational way, you probably get people that are a bit more willing to invest in the relationships in that community, and it will
Mm.
become more vibrant. So
Yeah.
we're a big advocate for not just quantity, but also quality.
Yeah, and forgive me, maybe I didn't quite frame it in the right way, but we've all been there with events, or I started my career in advertising sales, for in print, B2B print publishing, and we've all been there where the latest issue of a magazine gets published and printed, and it goes out there with a special feature in there, and then
Yeah.
a week later you see two or three companies that you'd never heard of before that you think, oh well, they would have been really, really suitable. So when I say a numbers game, what I mean is really just a tool that is helping you identify more potential good leads rather than just throwing as much out there to irrelevant companies. The beauty of these AI tools is they are able to refine down and tell you these guys are actually really suitable. They tick all the boxes. It is a
Yeah.
quality lead, and it's potentially people that you've not heard of before.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what's great about Super Benji is you don't have to compromise quality for quantity.
Mm.
You can take that white glove service that you might give to your VVIP guests or sponsors, and you can make that available to a much wider audience. Yeah,
What
it's exciting.
when it comes to startups in any industry, one thing I've found is that actually this is not just a sort of a one-way process in terms of assisting the organizer to find new startups and and new leads that could have the potential to exhibit at their event, but startups in any industry might not actually be aware of all the relevant events to their industry. So it's not just a one-way process. This could be as much to the benefit of the startups themselves by introducing them to events that they might not have actually been aware of that could be of big benefit to their business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's not even just that, it's educating them sometimes that events exist and that events could be a part of their marketing strategy. For a lot of startups, it's not even necessarily on their horizon or their radar. But uh, what we've realized though is that this approach to sales of finding new prospects, doing deep research and very highly personalized outreach is not just for startups, it's for any sponsor. So it's been really interesting to see the way people have used the tool. They're starting to use Super Benji as a way of reaching out to, very senior, very big sponsors, right through to helping them accelerate their discovery zone, which is obviously where we started.
Let's get into some of the sort of the hands-on aspects of it, if we could.
Mm.
Is it something that is kind of operated and managed by by the client themselves? Is it something that's done with your support? How does the process work initially if you have a customer that comes to you and says, look, we've heard about the Super Benji tool, we'd love to use it. How do we do so? How do we take it from here?
Yeah, good question. So there's different approaches. You've got managed for you service, which we provide, and then there's a do-it-yourself self-managed service, which some people prefer. It really depends on where you are at, but for both people, regardless, all we're doing is taking your name and your email and your LinkedIn, and then we're putting that to work using Super Benji. So, for instance, James, if you wanted people for the podcast, what we would do is either you would log on to our platform or we would do this for you. But Benji would find you 300 prospects that are perfect speakers for the podcast. He would research why would they be interesting speakers, what sort of content could we cover. He would brainstorm big ideas for each of those people. And then he'd start to send emails from James Dixon, from your email as James Dixon to those people. And then he'd send a follow-up on LinkedIn from James Dixon's LinkedIn. So each one of your potential podcast guests could receive a series of emails, a series of LinkedIn messages, all from you.
Wow. And from a, a process point of view, finding the leads, finding the prospects, is one thing, but then to be able to provide the sort of the assistance in maybe to how to target each one of those in a very, very specific manner so that it becomes a bespoke thing. So it doesn't just become one generic email that's being sent out to all of these prospects. That's another sort of key feature, isn't it, of Super Benji, that I noticed, that really there's that level of sort of, bespoke fit to each level of communication that goes out.
That's right. Yeah. And that's important for several reasons. The problem with templated messages is that the spam filters often pick up that they are templated and will filter them off. So you don't want them for that reason. The second reason, though, is that as to why personalization works so well, is we can customize a message based on the recipient's tone of voice rather than the sender's. So if you're sending a message to someone who prefers something short to the point, we can make sure the message is short and to the point. If you're sending something to someone who prefers a bit more of the backstory and a bit more of the detail, we can send a message that reflects their tone of voice as well. So it's really amazing what you can do. We do say to people, don't worry so much about this as being a way for you to express what you want to say. Think of it more as a way for you to engage people based on their terms. And AI allows you to do that.
You mentioned that you're sort of 2.5 years into the launch of Super Benji as a tool. What are some of the results that you've seen with clients that you've worked with? Because presumably that's given you probably 2 cycles. When you look at some of the events maybe that are run on an annual basis, you've probably had 2 cycles to reflect on now where the clients have used it. What have the results been?
Yeah, we've been working with a whole range of event organizers, but let me start with Informa, just because they're probably quite well known. So we've been working with them for over 18 months, and in their words, Super Benji has been an absolute game changer. So what it's doing for them is all the heavy lifting on prospecting. So it will find people, big or large sponsors, big or large exhibitors for their shows, and we're going, in some cases, super specific. So we might be looking at the latest sustainable packaging solutions for the pharma industry, for instance. Or we might be looking at new drug discovery solutions for a specific part of pharmaceutical drug development. So we can go super niche, find interesting innovations in those spaces. The results that they're getting, though, just to cut a long story short, I mean, sometimes campaigns will get a plus 20% reply rate, which is phenomenal. Most spam tools are generating 0.1 to 0.3%. So we're getting
Wow, is that the
over,
statistic?
that's the statistic. So in some cases, we're getting over 200%, 200 times, not 200%, 200 times the leads that you get. And that's why you don't always have to go with quantity. You can, if you can improve quality and keep quantity high, you can get amazing results. On average, for our event organizers, we're getting just over, just around 11% reply rates. So off the back of 300 prospects a month, you'd normally get about 30 phone calls, which is enough to fill one salesperson's calendar with
Sure, yeah,
a steady
yeah.
stream of leads in the lead up to a show. Yeah.
Well, and
Uh,
I mean, when it comes to breaking those numbers down, we've talked for decades in the events industry about ROI and ways of measuring it. I mean, presumably with a tool like this, because of its of how it's built, it's able to sort of quantify, I guess, in a way. Once you understand how many of those leads that it's helped generate have converted, presumably the statistical output at the end of a sales cycle is very accurate as well. So you can see how productive the platform has been.
yeah, it's a no-brainer. I mean, our ambition all along is that people should be able to get a 10%, a tenfold return on the investment they're making, and then that just makes Super Benji an easy decision for anyone.
Mm,
But our ambition has always been to be the highest quality, lowest price way for event companies to generate leads. So
mm,
it's far more cost effective than LinkedIn ads, Google ads, and we really believe in events. Our business is built on them. They're an important thing in terms of lead generation for us as well. And we've seen them work. Business is not based on transaction, it's based on trust, and trust is
mm.
built through connection, and connection happens at events. And so we're very bullish on the sector. We're really doubling down and building a product around it. And it's working really, really well. The nice thing about this as well is you don't have to sort of put it to work and then wait 6 months and hopefully we'll tweak things and get things right. You put it to work, and literally in the first few days, you'll start to see replies coming in.
Mm.
It's very, very quick. And, of course, those replies then go into a funnel and eventually will convert. But what we're doing is we're putting high quality leads straight into your inbox so that you can move them forward. And we're doing that in the most cost effective way possible. Yeah.
The AI evolution is one that I'm watching keenly because I'm part of it. We all have to accept that we are all part of the AI revolution. It will affect everybody in some way, shape, or form. And working in the events industry, I've now used all the sort of the commonly known tools that are out there to help with different
Right. Yeah.
things, and I've kind of been on a process, I guess, of experimentation. I've used Chat GPT, I've used Gemini, I've used Copilot, I've started using Claude recently. And I'm interested to see how each one performs and what its strengths and weaknesses are, because I think there's still a lot of people who are caught in this. Oh, well, I've got an AI tool here, I can just use Copilot. And I think people are maybe being not deceived a little bit, but thinking that maybe one AI tool can do everything that they need to. And I've slowly sort of seen a shift, and platforms like Super Benji are going to be great for showing people that AI is not one size fits all. Just use Gemini every day and that will do everything that you need it to do.
Yeah.
There are ways of getting very specific tools that utilize AI in the background to do very, very specific things. And I think that's kind of going to be the next sort of cycle of evolution, as I see it, in certainly in events and in business, is that people have done their initial experimentation with the big branded common platforms that a lot of people are aware of, and then they will start to merge and use individual platforms to do certain tasks that they need to achieve. I'm just wondering what your take on that might be, and whether or not you think similar.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's really important for everyone to be experimenting with a whole range of different AI tools at the moment. Having said that, what we don't want to do is like what's happened over the last couple of years with all these AI tools is you've got the rise of the sales engineer. So you've got someone that is then responsible for stitching all these tools together.
Mm,
We actually think that's a distraction. We think that role shouldn't have to exist. And we think technology should be so easy and so intuitive that anyone, regardless of their confidence in AI or their confidence with technology, can use it. And so what we've done with Super Benji is tried to make it so easy that whether or not you're experimenting with all the different LLMs and trying different AI tools, or whether you're fresh to this, you can use Super Benji. So we've worked really hard to make the UX super simple and hopefully super easy for anyone, regardless of your technology confidence. But it is exciting, isn't it, James? How much stuff's coming out and the opportunity that all creates for people.
Well, yeah. And the other thing that I've been giving some consideration to is actually the use of the term AI alongside platforms. You know, AI powered tool, such and such AI powered tool, or AI integration. I dare say that there's going to come a point fairly rapidly where companies no longer have to publicize the fact that they have an AI tool built into it, that it will
Yeah,
just become sort of de rigueur, that platforms and tools that we use have that element running in the background anyway. Do you know what I mean? But everything at
yeah,
the moment seems to want to publicize that it has an AI tool running alongside it. But I
yeah.
think that you know, I dare, in a decade's time, I don't see that being the case. I think it'll just be living there in the background of everything that we do.
I think so. I mean, we don't talk about ourselves as being available on the internet, for instance, anymore, and haven't done for a decade or two. And I think
Yeah.
AI is the same in the adoption. But yeah, these tools, they really make life easy for us. We're using a whole range of tools that are sort of a very complex workflow that's baked into one very easy to use interface. So hopefully, as a user, you wouldn't have to see that complexity. It's hidden below the surface for you, so that you can just get on with what you're doing and your role as sales and closing deals for the company.
For people who are listening to the podcast or watching the podcast today and thinking, well, how does a tool like this actually come about? You know, you started as you worked in events and in marketing. You then moved and evolved yourself into, like you said, these consultancy roles with events and finding the leads yourself using probably quote unquote traditional methods. How do you then effectively become a tech startup yourself? And people will be asking, how long is the process to launch 2.5 years ago? How long was the process to actually get to that point?
Yeah, yeah, it is funny. That is one of the deceptions with AI. It looks really easy because I could ask ChatGPT, write an email from James to Sarah, inviting her to a podcast, and you'd get an 80% good email just with that prompt. Um, would Sarah reply? Almost definitely no, because it would be so generic and so AI written that it would be obvious. Um, and so you can get 80% in 5 minutes. Refining that 20% and making sure you're developing something that Sarah would reply to is what then has taken the last 2.5 years. And a huge investment. We've taken on third-party capital. We've got a team of 10 people. I'm based here in Oxford. This is our office in Oxford. So we've got access to some amazing minds in this space. And what we've basically been doing over the last 2.5 years is taking that 80% good model and refining it and refining it and refining it, and to get to what is now a very, very good model that works for the informers of the world, but also works for much smaller event organizers. We even had it working to find sponsors for our local cricket club. My sons love playing cricket here in Oxford, and we put it to work for the local cricket club. Within 2 weeks, they had over 60 phone calls, and they'd closed 3 deals that brought in 20K of sponsorship revenue to the club,
Wow.
which is a huge game changer for a local cricket club. So it works for the big and the small organizations alike.
Well, that's great because I know when it comes to the AI tools, we said that there's ultimately not going to be a one size fits all approach. But I suppose the paradox of that is that you've created something from a sales point of view where it doesn't matter in what you're selling. As long as you give it the right information and access to what you need it to do. Generating leads is applicable in so many different businesses, even though obviously your primary focus at the moment is on events.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we are the only company that's doubled down on events. Everyone else is sort of in the generic lead gen space, but we've chosen events as our strategy, as our target to go after. I would say take a broad view of events. It's more about sponsorship, anything that's got an audience that's trying to be monetized. So definitely event companies, also publishers. Works very well for like award companies, companies that are trying to get
Sure.
people to
Yeah.
apply for awards.
Yeah.
They often have, yeah, and then yeah, and most event companies often have like a publishing element to them as well.
Mm.
So we're able to help with that whole stack of sales across the event publishing industry.
Yeah, and you know, I said recently to somebody that events, there's a lot more sort of what I consider to be entrepreneurial events that have sprung up since the pandemic. You know, you mentioned, you know, Informer, and there is, you know, big global organizations that are responsible for huge swathes of events around the world. But since the pandemic, I seem to have seen a lot more of, you know, independently owned entrepreneurial sort of style events coming to, you know, big exhibition venues, places like Excel, places like the NEC, you know, that they're coming to market with relatively small teams managing them, serving really sort of niche markets, often born out of communities that they've built, you know, prior to actually deciding to launch an event. And I see tools like this as a great resource actually for those sort of smaller entrepreneurial events that have got a great basis, but maybe not a huge resource of people there to be able to go and do lead generation.
Yeah, yeah, I think definitely that's the case. And we're trying to work hard to make this relevant to smaller companies as well. So one of the things we've done is worked hard to get our price down. For instance, we used to charge £2,000 a month for everyone. And now we've got price points that start at 99 quid a month. So we're making it easy and accessible, regardless of whether you're the informer of the world or you're just starting a new local show. This is hopefully something that is accessible and affordable for you.
Fabulous.
And if you stick around, we'll give you a promo code so you can try it out for free for a month as well.
Well, fabulous. No, that's great. And the next thing on my lips was going to be, you know, how do people get in touch? You know, if people want to find out more about Super Benji, what it does, get in touch with you, Jeremy. How do they do that?
Yeah, well, look, I'd love to talk. You can reach out to me on email, jeremy@superbenji.ai. You can go to our website, superbenji.ai as well. And on the website, you can actually just get yourself live. So you can click on Get Started there. You can go through the onboarding flow. And it takes about between 5 minutes and 40 minutes, depending on how much you want to edit and change things.
Mm.
But yeah, and there's a promo code for you. So if you enter EINFREE, you can try this out for free for a month, and see. You'll see results. Like I said, you'll see results within the first few days. Hopefully, you can even perhaps start to think about closing deals within the first month. Who knows? But you'll definitely see leads coming into your inbox, and you can compare the quality of those leads and the cost of those leads versus your other methods of bringing in leads, and hopefully try things out for yourself.
Fabulous, very generous. So let's just repeat that. EIN free is the promo code. So anybody listening or watching today's podcast that wants to have a little bit of a deeper dive into Super Benji, see what its capabilities are, EIN free is the promo code that you can enter on the superbenji.ai website in order to get that discount and go and give it a try for yourselves. One thing we've not mentioned, Jeremy, before we wrap up today, is the creation of Benji themselves, Benji the dog. And this might seem trivial, but in the world of AI, there's a lot of platforms and they all have a little logo or a brand. But I like the
Yeah.
idea that that Super Benji is, you know, is a character. You know, there is that if you go to the website, everybody, you'll see Benji the dog there ready
I
to
should have
assist
brought a
you.
plushie here, James, too.
It's
I tell
well,
you what,
it's great, and I'm hoping that you're going to say that, you know, that was a really sort of a calculated decision. Like, yeah, let's have you know, a character or some sort of, you know, figure that represents what Super Benji and what it is.
yeah, we're trying to make this easy, accessible, friendly, and fun for everyone. You don't have to be like a techie to use this tool. This is something that it performs better than high-tech tools, but easier,
Mm.
and is accessible for anyone. And so, yeah, Benji is very much a creation from that. It's definitely not replacing your job. It's here to be your best friend in sales. That's our ambition. That we take the hard work out, we do the heavy lift for you, and we allow you to do the fun parts of sales. And that's why it's a dog.
Well, there we go. They always said that the dog's a man's best friend, and
Man's best friend.
Benji,
Exactly.
Benji is now the salesperson in events' best friend.
There we go. Boom.
It's a great way to wrap up today's episode with my guest today, Jeremy Bassett, the CEO and founder of Super Benji. Just one more shout out before we go today, superbenji.ai. That's Benji, BENJI. AI, superbenji.ai, and that promo code again, EINFREE, if you want to give the platform a little bit of a test out. And my thanks to Jeremy for joining us today and having a bit of a chat. Give us a bit of an insight into that. Thanks very much, Jeremy.
Great to be here, James. Thanks for going through it.
Before we end today's episode, just a couple of little mentions, as I always do at the end of each show, for some of our own stuff. Of course, if you've started today's journey by watching the podcast on the Event Industry News website, thank you very much for tuning in. Please do make sure that you go to wherever you get your audio podcasts from, and make sure that you are subscribed and you like the podcast to make sure that you get notified when the new episodes drop, so you can listen to those while you're out and about on the go. Of course, that's where you may have started your journey today, by listening to us. If you've done that, thanks very much. Please do make sure that you go in the opposite direction. Head over to eventindustrynews.com when you get a second. Make sure that you check out all the latest news, features, special supplements that are available on the website, as well, of course, as the A to Z supplier directory. If you work in the events industry and you're looking for a product, service, or supplier, the chances are you will find it on the A to Z supplier directory on the eventindustrynews.com website. My thanks again to my guest today, Jeremy Bassett from Super Benji. My name's James Dixon, and we will see you all again on the next edition of the Event Industry News podcast. Goodbye, everybody.